I'd like to welcome you to this forum to really explore the future for this branch of the library, the North Albany branch. My name is Newell Eaton, and I'm going to be your moderator to help sort of coordinate and make sure all of you get a chance to be heard. But we wanted to start with having the executive director of the library, Scott Jefferson, give you kind of an overview of what's been found out so far about what's going on here at the library and some of the initial thoughts before we have a community conversation. Okay? If you haven't had a chance, please sign the sign-in sheet so we keep you posted. And if you have to leave early, sometimes people don't stick around for the whole thing. On the back table there are these cards that I'd love to have you fill out, which contain a little more information about really some of your hopes for the future here. Okay? Scott, you want to take it?
So I'm Scott Jefferson. I'm the executive director of the Albany Public Library. I've been the executive director of the library for almost 4 years now. Before that, I was actually a branch librarian for APL from 2000 to 2009, and I'm the librarian who opened this branch. So I have a deep understanding of the history of this location. But first, I wanted to talk about APL as an entire organization. We have been working on our strategic plan. We've been kind of discussing and looking at the future of libraries, and that has somewhat kind of informed our discussion here, or at least the board and administration's discussion here. We want to move APL services forward. We want to focus on being a civic space, tailor our services to demands, offer high-quality services and programs, provide a clean and safe space, and be open more hours. This is what we're hearing from Patron Feedback. We do 2 surveys a year, and we've done some focus groups around our strategic plan. We've also looked at strategic plans from neighboring libraries like the Colony Public Library and the Schenectady Public Library. And these are the things that we're seeing our public is asking for. We're also seeing in our statistics, which we'll get to later on, about the way people are using libraries in the future. So how do we move ourselves forward as an organization? Focus on being part of the community. If you go to any community or event, there's Carnival on the Hill, there's Lark Fest, all of these Madison Avenue Street Fair, you will now see the Albany Public Library. We realize that we can't stay within our doors. We have to be an organization that's engaged with the public outside our facilities. We also need value-added partnerships. Albany Public Library has a publicly funded budget. That budget is out there, and you will see every year when we put that budget forward, we project use of our fund balance. So in other words, we do not function in the black, we function in the red every year. We find ways to save money just like you do with your home budget. We find ways throughout the year, but every time we project our budget, we see a shortfall. So we are always looking for value-added partnerships, either financially or via services. So our Washington Avenue branch is a perfect example. In that building, there are 2 rent-paying organizations. The ACAP, which is the Head Start classroom, which is on our 3rd floor, and then Cycle, which is in our basement, and they pay rent to the organization. This helps with some of our budget shortfall. And then value-added partnerships, like Literacy New York, who operates out of 2 of our locations, or the Literacy Zone, which I think right now is in 3 of our locations, which use our space. They don't pay us rent, but they provide essential programming that we can't currently provide because we don't have the funding. And something that I am big on is being a financially prudent organization. Every year, we go to every neighborhood association that will allow us in the door. Sometimes we sneak in. They'll allow us in the door because we have to go before the public and talk about our budget, whether or not there's an increase or not. And every year we go to these groups. I go to almost every single one of these groups. And we hear about taxation, we hear about taxes, and that is a concern of both the administration and the board as an organization. So, a little history about this branch. We opened in November 2005 when the North Albany YMCA first opened its doors. Due to a small footprint, we really considered it a satellite library with fewer resources, materials, and computers, and no dedicated space for spaces space for meetings or programs. All of our other locations have meeting rooms. All of our other locations have program space. We operate Monday through Saturday year-round, but because we're inside the YMCA, had to reduce our Saturday hours when they shortened their hours. The Albany Public Library Board of Trustees established an ad hoc North Albany Branch Committee in March of 2017, and we've had more than a meeting a month. I think we've had about 14 meetings since then. This is just the committee of the board, and they were publicized meetings. So this is something that we've been looking at because the board thinks it's important for us to study. So North Albany branch, percent of all APL usage. This branch is 4% of our overall circulation in the city, 6% of our door count, 3% of our Wi-Fi usage, 4% of our computer use, and 5% of our program attendance. So not only is this the smallest physical footprint, it's also some of our least participation. So our collection is about 11,000 items, 6 public computers, yes, Wi-Fi, although YMCA has Wi-Fi and we've seen our Wi-Fi numbers go down because of that. No meeting rooms, no study rooms, no dedicated program space, space for 12 seats and 2 tables. It's 2,500 square feet, as we can all see here. So we didn't want to have this meeting in here, but this was the space that we had to have this meeting. This is the number that jumped out at me when we first started doing an analysis, and it's a really important number for people in the city of Albany to understand. So the North Albany branch costs more per capita than any other branch in our system. Per 100 patrons, it costs us $37, whereas Bach and Arbor Hill, Bach, which is on New Scotland Avenue, costs us $17, and Arbor Hill, which is 2 miles up the road, costs us $18. So this costs us double per patron to run. Some of the reasons for that is we do pay a utility fee for here to the YMCA, but part of that also is staffing, and also the budget to buy the books, and also to have a T1 line connection brought here so we have internet access. So what are trends in APL and libraries across the country? A space that is welcoming for large and small events and programs. Our number of programs is up 45% over the last 3 years. The modern library isn't just about books and DVDs. It's always going to be about books and DVDs, but that's becoming less and less of what we do. What we really do is host programs, provide services. This is the tax services that are going on. This is I think a job fair related program that's going on. Any day you walk through one of our branches, you can look in a program room, there will be some essential service being provided. And again, sometimes this is done through our staff, and sometimes this is done with those value-added partnerships, like the Cash Coalition, the YMCA has come in and done programs for us. The digital divide, a space for Wi-Fi and computer usage. Wi-Fi usage at APL is up 5% over the last 3 years. And why I say Wi-Fi usage and not computer usage is because people want to use the library as a place they work, either while they're applying for jobs, or maybe they're like someone who does work in their home. They want to use the library as a co-working space. And we see that now growing through all of our branches. And circulation. While loaning books and materials will always be a part of what we do, there's been a decline in physical items borrowed by patrons over the last 8 years. And I have to tell you, this is a trend across libraries across the state and the nation. Total circulation for APL is down 30% over time. Do you want to guess what leads that? DVDs. People don't borrow DVDs the way they used to. Last year, we recorded a 2% increase in our overall circulation, but much of that had to do with ebooks and how much ebooks were being used. So what is the future of libraries? Public space that is not home or office for individuals to go and do work and be a part of their community. Study rooms and shared workspace. Partner with multiple agencies to provide space for their programs to meet client demands. We have Hudson Valley Community College, which uses our study rooms to talk to young students who are thinking about going to community college. Again, the tax program, we have a few different health organizations who come, healthcare providers who come and meet in our buildings to help people kind of learn about what the healthcare options are on the free market. And then one that's really important to me, which is civic space. A space for outside organizations and government agencies to meet and engage with the public. Neighborhood associations, you name it, we host all of these groups, and they all recognize the library as essential because it's a space that they can come and meet. And what amazed me, and we had to check this number 3 times because we couldn't believe it was right, 71% at APL over the last 3 years continuing in growth. In other words, we saw a 71% increase in outside organizations and governmental agencies using our space to do meetings. So this is a growing part of our business model. This location, again, does not have a program space. This location, again, does not have a space as a civic space. It doesn't have a study room. And these are all things that we wish we could provide, but we can't in the space that we're currently in. So that's it for my presentation. I will be staying here the entire time. I will stay once we've, convened, I guess is convened, if you want to come and talk to me. I also, when I've done them here, I also do public office hours at all the locations. So if you want to come and have a sit-down conversation with me, whether or not it's you want to tell me how great the staff are here, we already know, but how great the staff are here, or you want to come and yell at me about this, you're more than welcome to come. It's actually disappointing when it doesn't happen. I sat in that back room for like an entire day hoping someone would come, but I definitely will schedule one here for you guys to come and have a conversation with me.
Great.
And I'm going to hand it over to Noel.
Thanks, Scott. So before we start having a conversation with each other, do you have any questions that you really want to throw at Scott about what you just heard? Any more details around these facts before we start hearing from you? Pretty clear what the situation is?
I want to know, as a facilitator, are you a resident of Albany? Do you know the city of Albany?
I live on Lancaster,
Okay, that's
right
important
off
to know.
Lark. That's part of why they asked me to come in.
Okay, that's important.
I use the library routinely, right at the Washington. I haven't been here before.
And Bill, I'm sure you've heard this spiel before, but you know almost 74% of our staff are Albany residents. And that's really important for us to use facilitators that are city residents and understand the city. One other statistic that we didn't want to use was a discussion about what the percentage of the patrons were who use this branch. 1/3 of the patrons who use this branch are not city residents, and over 2/3 of the people who use this branch do not have North Albany addresses. We didn't originally want to bring it up, but you opened the door.
Yeah.
Yes, I have a question. We used to have that back room there for our usage, and I know a number of years ago we lost it. Is that ever?
We lost that the day we opened. I don't know. In my time with APL, that space was in the original design and the original blueprints. That room was ours, but we want to have a great relationship with the YMCA. At the time, they did a wage center back there. The Housing Authority's very successful job improvement. And so they took that space that's never really been our space.
Because we were able to have public meetings back there then, because we had more space. Just-
It was shared for a while.
It was shared for a little bit, and then because it was before the branch, we lost it before the other branches, the other new branches opened up. So that was over 8 years ago now, so it was.
I've been here a long time.
Yeah, it was a little bit of time, we shared it for a little bit of time, and then it just was, no, we don't even have access, we can't even get access to that back room.
Yes.
So what was the idea behind having a satellite library as opposed to a branch?
The timing was kind of poor. So this branch opened right before we did the branch improvement process that we went through, where we opened 2 new branches and refurbished, I think it was 3 branches. This was a part of a grant, and it was kind of when the city still, right now we're our own separate school district library. So the city, we have a great relationship with them, but they're not they no longer own us, I guess. The public owns us, which is the way I think it should be. It was kind of while we were in the process of doing that and reorganizing ourselves, so this just kind of snuck in on us. I know that, there was good conversations between the board, because at the time that board, I think, was still part of the city. There was good conversations about it, but it definitely didn't fit in with the larger plan at the time.
But if the whole idea of a library is to bring people in and gather the community, it seems like this place was put together without that in mind. It was just sort of a place where I can come and get a DVD.
I wasn't the director at the time, so I can't speak to those meetings, but I do agree that, I wish this was twice the size and had study rooms and program rooms, and if I was part of that design process, you would definitely see that.
I think the other point that Scott pointed out is that the very nature of public expectations of libraries has evolved pretty significantly in the past decade. Those things kind of went on, but if you look at his statistics that he shared, the whole focus, circulation was very different. I remember when I would go to the library every few days to get a DVD. I rarely go anymore because it's all coming to me direct, right? And those are the kinds of shift with technology that's also shifting the very nature of what's going on with libraries today. Yeah.
Yes, Regina Dew again. I've been a resident of North Albany for approximately 17 years. I live right up the hill in Albany Housing Authority.
Mm-hmm.
And we used to have this as a source of riches for our young people.
Mm-hmm.
I know when Housing Authority did have that, we had more books, we had a lot more things available to us.
Mm-hmm.
And recently I spoke to Mayor Sheehan. I know she's going to be having a talk with Mr. Jimbowski, and this is so vital to our children in the neighborhood. This is where a lot of my emotions and feelings. I spent my youth in a library. That's where I found my direction in life. I read Father Damien's story, and now since 1993, I've been involved with the Albany Damien Center. These things direct people, and our children need direction. They need this resource. We're desperate, so I fear if our lights are turned off, the lights for these children. I met a little neighbor of mine who I've been concerned about the other day, sitting over there, sitting next to him, and I said, I haven't seen you around lately. He said, I go to school, I come to the library, and I do my homework, and I go home. And he says, I stay out of trouble. This is such a resource, so you're going to hear me talk, because I just
That's what we're here for.
Okay, so there's one word. Thank you.
What I heard you say is what you really think is needed in North Albany is a place, particularly for young people, to come and study, to have access to books. But that's a critical resource to have here. Whether it's here or not, it's needed somewhere, right? That's what I'm hearing, yeah.
I think you've got synergies here with the Y and the school and the library here. And I know this place because I remember the Y that comes regularly. And I often see young people in here. Now, I know that the situation is different this year, and I think we're having to see how it settles out, because the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade used to be here, and they were part of the usage, and now they are not. But the younger kids need a library. I am not very well informed. I do not know if this school has its own library.
Half-time.
All elementary schools
Have half.
have halftime.
And this library is here after school, and that's when I've seen it used. And used by these young people who otherwise, and they tend to be a little overstimulated even in here, and they get reminders as needed, and a lot of them aren't overstimulated. But that's an important experience, and they're having it here. And I don't know that they would have it if this place were not here next to the basketball courts in the school.
So I hear two things. The connection to the Y is valuable for kids because they cross between the two spaces.
Especially after school.
And as an after school, there's a need for an after school environment that's got both of those qualities. Okay. Yeah.
My personal story is that I've been living here for 4 years, and I've come to this library. This year, I was diagnosed with breast cancer, so I'm having chemotherapy. This library has been a sanctuary. It helps me to get out the house. It helps me to come read books. I bring my grandkids here to read books, use the computer. My husband come here. So for me personally, I would like to see it closed. Because like I said, it's a sanctuary for me. That's my story.
Right. And you live very close to
I
here?
live right down the hill,
Okay.
down the corner there.
So it's a very short, easy
Short to
walk,
easy
so the
walk,
location
yeah.
matters to you as
Yes,
well.
yes.
Okay. For those services. Yeah.
I'd like to see the library, if we could get the resources, connect with some other small institutions in the city. I don't know if you're aware of it, but somebody, I don't know who, maintains a website and Wikipedia telling the story of North Albany. Who does it? I don't know. Whoever the brains behind it, it is a really extensive chronicle and portrayal of North Albany. Now, right down the street here is the Tivoli Street Archives for the county. Now, I spend a lot of time myself, because I'm an academic, at the New York State Library. And people come in droves to the State Library to look up their ancestry, their genealogy, but also the property that they once owned. Now, I can see possibilities where we could cooperate with the Tivoli Street Archives, and not just for this library, but also several others, to enhance the position in history of this area. If also we could do something which other places in the country are doing, if we were to do GIS maps of the city parcel layout going back 200 years, people could come in and trace the property that perhaps they once owned and how it has been traced through history. And there's all kinds of other history in this area, including some of the restored homes, Tenbrook, Cherry Hill, some of the others here, which I think might have opportunity to work with the library system, particularly for history. And if you want to know more about it, I've got some books that I can show. One of the best books, believe it or not, is written by Mormons in Utah, but it was written for nationwide application. And if we were to help people that come from out of town, and most of the people coming from the state to the state library are coming from all over the United States to find out not just their ancestry, but also the properties. Another part of it might be tracing the history with the Albany Rural Cemetery. Several places in Albany could be linked to the library. It would take some money, but that's something to be explored.
So how might we really connect to some of these really historic gems and connect them
Right.
locally and regionally to, or statewide in that kind of way? Yeah.
And I also want to piggyback on Bill's ancestry. Mr. Jimbowski this year.
Katie, you can call me Scott. You can
Scott.
call me Scott for 15 years.
I known Scotty since he was the librarian down at the John Howe Library, and he was the best guy working with our children down in the South End. So I admire and respect you very much. And he got us Ancestry.com available to all of us for free. And if we don't know about it, maybe the school should have a class in your ancestry. That would be a wonderful thing to utilize what we have here. And I'm just piggybacking on another idea. I know if you're talking with Mayor Sheehan, well, Mayor Jennings, before he left office, had suggested this building down here, the Pearl of Wisdom, as an alternative library. I think it would be great space for the North Albany area to utilize that for our cultural affairs up here. We really do not have a space. And as a historical place that we are, we need our own place, North Albany. We are on the map, we just gotta put ourselves there.
Right.
Sorry, okay.
That's okay, that's what we're here. Who haven't we heard from? Yeah.
Okay, now, in Georgia, they were saying that building that used to be nurse was a Catholic school, and different nursing home.
Yeah.
That is going to be turned into apartments, because I'm at the North Albany Association meeting, last year, we had a meeting over at the post, and they said that St. Catherine wanted to put apartments in there. Now, if we don't have this library here, and I've been out here 40 years, the children, especially the young ones, it will put them out into the street into a lot of danger.
Yeah.
They come here to the library, they get on the computers. If you take this from us, because I don't think that there is a library in the school anymore. They come over here. Why make everything so hard for the young as well as the older people?
Right.
You know, it doesn't make any sense. They want to take everything from us out here in North Albany. We need to keep this library to ensure that our children, they come in here, you know, they get on the computer, yes, they come on, they get some of them look up different assignments and whatnot that they have to do. But the most important thing is they are the future generation. And that's what the library should be thinking about. I grew up down in the South End. I went to John Howe Library when I was in elementary, middle school, and high school. I'm out here now, and if you take this, it's gonna destroy a lot of people's lives, children especially. Why do that to them?
I think an important, at least my understanding is, the conversation isn't about closing the library. It's about the very nature of how to provide library services for the area, and it may not be in this spot, but then it's not about giving up library services in North Albany. It's this site is not meeting, as Scott pointed out, economically is not working out, and it's not able to offer the full range of services that you guys want, right? So it's like, what are the library services you really want to have around here? And a lot of you are expressing that very clearly. Anybody else have another point? Yeah.
I don't know if it was discussed, but I know originally when libraries thought about the area, it was in conjunction with the YMCA. A lot of elected officials worked to get the library here, along with the YMCA wanted to build, and it would be utilized for the neighborhood. And closing it would be a disservice, as she mentioned, to the neighborhood as well as the school. Now that we have a refugee school there, and you know a lot of kids coming here who can't speak English, to close the library, they're like, you know, it's like, okay, maybe a slap to the face of the family, like, okay, here we are in the community, now we close the library, we can't have access to it.
Okay. Important point. Anybody else? Yeah.
One other question for Scott.
Yes.
The library, I mean, your presentation clearly articulated that this space isn't meeting the needs for a number of reasons. So it almost seems like the APL does have, or will come with a proposal first to say, we plan to put a big library somewhere in this area that meets the need. So I'm just not quite sure of how.
We have not really discussed that, and you know there are a few things that I think we need to think about before we do that. One is based off the numbers from our branch improvement. So we redid 3 buildings and we built 2 buildings. That costs about $7 million. if we were to have a branch, say the size of Bach, which is our second smallest location, it's a busy location, second smallest location, has a study room, has 2 study rooms, has a program space, that would probably add about $200,000 every year to our overall annual budget, because what would happen is we would have to hire more people. The bigger the space, for safety, one thing that I'm really big on, it's in my presentation, every time I present, you'll hear me talk about it. I want libraries to be a safe and secure space for everybody, from our staff, to the public who are using it, to the outside organizations. So we can't staff the library with 1 or 2 people. If we were to open a branch the size of Bach, we would have to probably hire about 4 more people, and that costs, around $200,000 more than $200,000. To work in a library, you need to have digital literacy skills. You need to have great customer service skills. Back in the day, when we all used to take out books and they stamped your book, and I was alive for that in a library user. I get my mom's genetics, I'm lucky. You could do it with a volunteer. Could be behind the desk, and they stamped your books, and you went out the door, and maybe you went to story time. That's not the way libraries work now. We're like community centers. And this branch is not alone in the fact that we have situations that go on that are sometimes violent and sometimes criminal. Happens at all of our locations. From Pine Hills to North Albany, we have those things go on, and I know because I'm the one who deals with them. I'm the one, and Melanie, the assistant director, deals with the police and works with the staff to make sure that the staff feel secure. So it's not like we could find a building, rehab it for a couple $100,000, because that's just not the way libraries work, and then staff it with a volunteer and 1 staff member. We'd need to have a fully functioning, well-staffed library. We also have currently 7 locations, and we have about 8 people on our facilities group, which is, for the condition of our buildings, shows that they're a really good group and hardworking group of people, but that's a really thin facilities crew for the amount of real estate that we own. So if we were to take on another building, we would probably need to hire another facilities person as well.
Let me just say that slightly different, I like your answer. A clear definition of the problem is always important. So we all know that this library is not meeting the needs of North Albany. I'm not from North Albany, I live in Albany, I live in Washington Park, been in Albany 20-some years. It's not meeting the needs of the people who are here. So regardless of our decision to stay or move from here, the underlying problem is not solved.
No, I agree. It's not, if this was, I had a conversation with somebody a couple days ago at one of our other branches who said, Scott, you're closing one of my branches, and I went, okay, I'm just walking out the door, how are you? This is not an easy decision. This is definitely not an easy decision for the library. It is definitely not an easy decision for the library director. I'm on 0 hours of sleep. So this is not something that we're taking lightly. We've been working on this for a year, looking at this for a year before we were even ready to kind of bring this forward to the public, because we definitely needed to have all of our ducks in a row. So yes, I agree, but the problem comes down to, again, money, which is all of our issues. And if we were to build a facility, if we were to magically win Powerball, as we joked about, if we were to magically win Powerball and build a branch like the Bach branch, which I think would work really well in this part of the city, we would still be looking at a significant increase in our annual budget.
Yes, speaking of finances, and to give this young man a plug, the Albany Foundation is having a fundraiser, so if you got extra cash, you can give it to the Albany Library Foundation. I'm plugging you. And I also know, though, that our rent here has been increased double.
It's not our rent, it's our user fee, so it's to pay for electric.
Okay.
I can't fault the YMCA for that. They have not raised our rent since the first day. So we have not seen an increase since they started. We also view the YMCA as one of our most value-added relationships. We work with the YMCA not just in this building, but in other buildings. Their camps take part in our summer reading club. This is a really good relationship that we have going. Normal and I have worked together on a million things, his history tour of the South End. We don't want to add financial pressure to the YMCA. We don't want to be one of its burdens. So I cannot, when they said we're raising your rent, I said I cannot fault you for that, because they need to make, there's wonderful staff here This is a wonderful resource. I don't want APL, and I don't think my board does either. They may tell me differently in a couple weeks at my next board meeting. That we don't want to be one of the reasons why they could be losing them.
And I'm still going to keep up with my pressure because I'm sitting next to a member of the South End Walking Tour group and a long-term friend of Mr. Abraham's since 87, I take you way back. And, you know, I just know we are a great charity for the YMCA, and, you know, I'm even thinking of recouping that room. I mean, maybe if we really pled with them and pled our case, we could keep and expand and find the YMCA some more room to expand. Or, you know, I think we need to be extremely creative with this because these are both gold mines for our community. We should have had more from the get-go. And you know, and maybe that still can be worked upon even in these dark times. So, you know, I'm just trying to be a ray of hope and light for this place, that we'll keep the doors open somehow.
Thanks. Does anybody else have a chance? Go ahead.
Again, I don't know if it's discussed, but if the library was closed, what would the space be utilized for? Scott?
That's you know, that's up to the Y. That's up for the YMCA.
I don't like pointing fingers, but
Okay.
I don't,
Well, I know you part of the YMCA.
yeah, but Angela Alonzi
Oh,
here
okay.
is the executive director
Hi,
of this
good afternoon.
YMCA.
So, you know, again, we have, the YMCA has no current plans, as we are longstanding partners with this branch of the library. And so we would be, you know, if a choice was made to move from this location, we would be looking at ways to fill the gap. We have young people in and out of our building. The school, both schools, the North Albany Academy as well as the Albany International Center, now currently use our gym for their physical education classes and other classes. So we would be looking at this space for a way to meet the needs of the community, especially the young people in the community that we have in our building all throughout the day.
Let me also, you could correct me if I'm wrong, the rumors I'm hearing, they want to expand the reception area, that's one rumor, and another rumor I heard they want to put a weight room, so.
There are absolutely no concrete plans, absolutely not. So those are just what they are,
Okay.
rumors.
I can tell you that the library doesn't plan to leave North Albany. And again, that was in my presentation.
I missed it, okay.
We're more about outreach than we've ever been before. And if there was an after-school club here or whatever the YMCA is thinking about doing, we've already had those conversations, making sure our staff can get here. Maybe even providing computers that are here, that we provide the computers, and the YMCA monitors for us. So again, I don't want anybody to think we're gonna pack up and go, and I know I can't escape you. I will see you somewhere. But hopefully I will see you in North Albany, because we're not gonna change that service model where we're in every neighborhood. There are, you know, I go and present to the neighborhood association out in Pine Barrens. I present to the Eagle Point Neighborhood Association, and every time we go, we get grief about the fact that they don't have a bridge. The Pine Bush community really doesn't have a branch. So what we've been doing, which has helped us out, is we're now doing book deliveries to people who can't leave their house. So we're getting books to those members of the public. We're doing programs in schools. We can do a program in the YMCA. We can do a regular scheduled program in the YMCA. And we can afford to do that. And that gives us the ability to be flexible. We've also talked about some automated services, like an automated book, just, you know, almost like a machine for books. We've talked about doing that as well. So it's not like we're sitting here and going, okay, we're just gonna leave and that's it, we close the lights, we hit the road. It's the opposite of that. It's how do we modernize our library services so that we're still meeting the needs in this neighborhood, but we don't need to have a physical presence that costs us so many resources.
And why we wanted this forum is to hear what you really felt are really the essential services that are important to have tied to the library. That was our main intention here, yeah.
I've lived in this neighborhood since the early 80s. And I've seen lots of changes, but one thing I find frequently as I meet people who once lived in this neighborhood but live in some other part of the city. And lots of them have fond memories of growing up here. And that's another resource that we could tap by way of tracing the history of this part of the city, the lore, much like the Wikipedia site. Another thought I have is because the warehouse district is being restored, and because some of those old factory buildings could be great apartments for people who would like not to live in the burbs, it could be that those buildings on Broadway could very well bring in more traffic here. And we could also find, and I don't know the reason why this bus service that right now has been continuing up to the warehouse district, the logic behind that may very well feed into this area too. One more point I want to make, just because my own background gives me an interest in this area. 40% of all of the residential parcels in the city of Albany are absentee owned. In other words, there are people who have bought these structures, frequently rented them, and live in the burbs so that they're income producing. And when they're no longer income producing and they're derelict, they become abandoned, and we see all over the city these little red squares with white crosses for them to be torn down. Now, there's a tax solution to that, which I won't get into. I'll talk with the finance committee of the board shortly. But it really would behoove the library if we could find a way to foster the restoration of those buildings. Last thing that hasn't been mentioned is that it was the neighborhood association that took the initiative to create the community garden just north of here about 8 years ago. And the community garden people responded to the pressure of the neighborhood group, and in fact there was discussion for a while that the tools for use of that community garden might be provided by the library. I don't know if eventually, I don't think it happened. But that's another area that we can explore.
Yes.
I have a question. I don't know whether the library works with the schools. It's thinking of the school library sitting there empty half the time with computers, and the kids definitely interested in that.
We have, I think, a very healthy relationship, specifically with North Albany Academy. They distributed the flyers for this, and we had a long conversation with the principal about it. We're in the schools a lot. We'd like to be in the schools more, but we have a finite amount of resources.
We regularly do, we had the librarian who's, sorry, I'm Rebecca Lubin, I'm the head of branches, and one of the heads of branches at Albany Public, and I manage this branch, Howe, and Delaware. We have the librarian who's normally here. She had several classes visit, got library cards for the students in North Albany Academy. We have always had a close relationship with Albany International, and since we knew we were at the table with them when they were talking about putting it in and said, we want to be a part of this and everything. We regularly do story times for the pre-K classes that are over there. So we're always invited to events, back to school events, and things like that. So we do have that already, that outreach
That's wonderful.
partnership established.
But it's not clear to me what's happening to the facilities and especially the computers.
For
Their
them,
computers are not used
I'm not sure.
more than half the school time?
Well, the library, so in New York State, and this is, I don't wanna take too much
I
time
know,
talking about
it's,
school librarians. In New York State, elementary schools are either not mandated or mandated only to have school librarians for half the day. This
They're not.
drives me nuts.
they're not mandated.
Yeah, they're not mandated.
Only at
It's
the
just,
school level.
it's only at the high school level, which I think is insane. My children are in elementary school in the city of Albany. It drives me nuts that they don't have a librarian. So I agree with that. They should have a library. They should have a school librarian, a trained MLS school librarian who's there from 7 a.m. till 4 p.m. Like we experience. However, we're not the school district. So I can as a parent talk to the school superintendent, which I have about having school librarians there all day long. But that's the only control. We're two very separate organizations. I can tell you that all the relationships that Rebecca described, we have in almost every school in the city of Albany, whether or not they have a branch close by or not. And a lot of times we ramp up those endeavors when they don't have a school that's close by. So we go out of our way to do outreach to schools that aren't in a walking distance from one of our libraries. I do not, and especially Rebecca is a big advocate for outreach, and she's in charge of the east branches. I don't see that changing, I actually see that increasing.
What you couldn't do, though, is when you fill out your cards, at the bottom it says, are there any other library services or programs you would like to see in the North Albany neighborhood? If you wrote that in there, when we collect all this information together, we would have that listed and that will be a public record. So you could be sharing that information that will then at least, hey, this is what we think the schools ought to be doing as well. Okay. Are there any other topics? Yeah, go ahead.
Since you mentioned superintendent, how, I know the library has a close ratio with the school district. What has the superintendent said so far with us?
No, we haven't talked about North Albany, we've only met once.
Oh,
And when we
okay.
met, we talked about our summer reading program, our Raising a Reader program, and we talked about outreach. And we talked about student behavior too. But we talked about outreach and getting in the schools more. She got a library card at the city hall the night that you were there for the education night. She was very responsive to me, so I think we're gonna get into the schools more than we're already in there. And again, I don't think especially from having the conversation with the principal that I had, I don't think she's gonna let us go anywhere when it comes to the outreach that we do for that school. It's something we're dedicated to.
Was there talk about adding something to the school budget in regards to libraries?
Their budget and our budget totally separate. So when I was addressing what's your name?
Is Alan.
When I was addressing Mrs. Allen's concerns, that had to do with school librarians who are separate from us. We don't run the school library.
Well, in the school budget, they have the board of trustees nominations.
Yes.
So.
When the
those go
school,
hand in hand.
when the school budget and the school budget runs the library budget, vote and trustee vote for us. They collect the money for us, but it's two totally different things on the ballot when it's voted.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah.
There's a library budget and then the school budget. They run at the same time because we have the same calendar as them, and they're nice enough to do it because it would cost us a lot of money for us to run our own vote, and we'd have to do it in less locations, which I'm totally against.
Right.
But other than that, we're two separate boards, two different budgets.
Yes, back there.
Thank you, Wanda. They come from a budget vote that we do every year. So in 2000, what year did we recharter?
The school budget.
In 2003, we rechartered, become what's called our own library district. We were under the city, and then we decided to separate ourselves from the city. We had to get rechartered through Department of Library Development, which is part of state ed. So we are our own separate governing entity. If we did not do that, we would not have the branches that we have. I don't know what library service would look like in this city. So then every year, if there's an increase in our budget, that budget needs to be voted on. So if we didn't increase last year, we didn't increase the year before, we didn't increase the year before that. So we've done 3 increases over the last 3 years, and that's voted on by citizens in the city of Albany.
So you give us the budget
all 7 locations.
For all 7 locations. All right. So now, how do you decide how much monies are spent at each location?
It's typically done by usage, but not entirely. In other words, we look at usage and we go, okay, this is how we kind of split up the budgets. And then we go, well, where do we want to focus more on? We changed the staff here about 2 years ago to get an increase in usage, and there has been an increase in usage. We don't want people to stop using us, we want people to use us more. So there's always a discussion at the every end of every year with the finance committee and also with the administration to talk about where do we put funds in different places.
Is this the only school-based library, in other words, schools?
This is the only shared space library. All of our, and that's done purposely. 7 years ago, our Bach branch, our New Scotland branch, was actually inside School 19. And as much as I would love that to still be the case, because it make my life a lot easier, we decided to separate her to another building because it just works better. We're in control of our own facilities. We're kind of in control of our own destiny. This is the only shared space. All of our other buildings were funded through bonds, which we just refinanced. I think it was originally, the first bond ask was $30 million. And they're either new or all refurbished within the last 7 years. I'd also be remiss not to mention that we do get some county funding, but we don't get county funding directly. We are Albany County's central library, and we get some money from the state for being Albany County's central library as well.
So you said you don't get it directly on them?
We don't get any funding directly from the county. Our money comes from the state to provide services to the full county.
Okay. Oh, for the full county.
For the full county, and we are the net loaner of books to other libraries. In other words, there is no library that touches us when it comes to the amount of our materials that get sent to other libraries and borrowed at other libraries, which is a system I am not against because you can request almost any book that's out there through our system.
I have been researching, trying to figure out how you can stay here as long as you can, but at least you stay in the North Albany area. You know that they're doing something down here on Broadway, but I don't know if Broadway, how many kind of people feel about moving down, on Broadway in the Dole building, in Hippersville, but I just want to say right now, the building, old St. Bernard School is out. That's already being looked at, a lot of money has been put into repurposing, that now. But I guess my concern is, because I went to school twice, as a child. That's where I did my elementary education, all right? And so, and of course, I live in North Albany too, all right? But I think that the one thing that does make this great now, they have maintained so wonderful relationship with Orville and, with Mr. Brown and all that and everything. But I think at the time, seems like people saw some kind of cool goods that the library being here, that this is supposed to be a win-win situation for this community, And, I heard Bill bring up the Hall of Records that's, right now shared services with Albany County and the city of Albany too, okay? And for adults, that's an okay place to go. Small, kids, I don't know if I wanna see them, on that, because that's really a commercial warehouse area right there, so it's really not good for children at all, not that area. But with all these businesses out here, I mean, we have so many businesses out here. My idea is to make up some money from them, to at least keep this library going for, a year or whatever it is. Because the money is here, $38,000, it's down the street. And it's on Broadway, it's on First Street, it's here. Okay? So, I think it's just going to take some effort. But it's obvious that the people here, you can't judge everything just by the number of people that are in this room.
budgets. You know, and we need to get into everybody's minds as far as money is concerned, you know, right now. So, I'm just saying.
No, and you know, the library has appreciated the Honorable Williams' help that she's actually been giving us, and she's been looking for funding for us for some time now. So we're grateful for that, and that is a piece of this. Again, this is about finance, this is about money, and having limited resources, both in space, but also in staffing, and also in services.
Anybody else who hasn't had a chance yet?
I know, I spoke about that. So when would, if it was to close, when would the decision be done?
We're not sure right now because, you know, we've
It's the-
started having a conversation with the community. You know, we're gonna be doing an online kind of portal that people can go to. We're gonna have these comment cards at the branches. So this is gonna be an ongoing discussion. I will tell you that the Y was gracious enough not to raise our rent till 2018. So we'll be talking to them again to see, you know, is there a couple extra months you guys can kind of, you know, backdate that. They've been great to work with. I'm not gonna speak for them, but that's a possibility. So this isn't something that like we're gonna decide on next week. You know, and we will, has tried to get information as much as possible. I'm definitely now gonna set up one of my public office hours here so people can come and see and at least speak with me.
Now, you mentioned the Y hasn't raised the rent. Are they hurting for money, that they wanna raise your rent, for something that's so, you know, needed in
I
this
don't wanna
neighborhood?
speak for another organization.
No, I know, you know.
I can speak to that.
Please do.
So, my name again is Angela Lozzi. I'm the new executive director. I've been down here for 6 months now. And we operate this branch at a deficit, a six-figure deficit. And so, you know, I think as Scott mentioned at the top of the hour, that in commitment to providing services to the community, we're always willing to work with the library. And it's a valuable resource to the community. So, but yes, we do run our branch at a six-figure deficit and have done so, but understand the value of being here in the community and providing services to the community. And in addition to that, I think, you know, the other piece is that, you know, the fees that it covers, it's basically common charges and maintenance, and that's all it does. So it doesn't have any part of our operating budget at all.
Well, as you heard Regina and Bill and wanted to mention about, you know, the neighborhood, you know, this neighborhood seems like we're getting dumped on. We lost the post office on Broadway. You know, it's a good neighborhood. You know, it's changing, but better or worse, as you can see, you know, you got the new apartments over there on Broadway, you know, Nipper, you know, this neighborhood's changing. So to close the library, where the kids are gonna go? You're gonna be out in the street, you know.
We're committed to working together to
Right.
make sure that those resources that are valuable, like I said, you know, I'm here every day, working with young people every day. I play basketball with them, I read with them, I sit with them in the lobby, I sit with them in here. We are committed to working together to make sure that young people especially, and our older active adults especially, have the resources that they need.
And that really was the purpose of this forum, was to hear what you think are the resources that need to happen around here, right?
Well, I hope you're not basing on what the 10 minutes here, I wanted to mention, you know.
As we said, we've got another one of these.
More come on Wednesday, you know, I've been putting the word out there, people come out,
Yep.
you know, been blasting it out there.
We'll have the evening one, as well as we're collecting information, both through the website and as well as through these kind of cards. So this is just the beginning of percolating those things from a community perspective.
I hope it percolates more.
Who haven't we heard from that would like to say something? Everybody. Is there anything else anybody wants to say? Yes.
Okay, while I'm at it, my name is Regina Dew, and you can look me up on Facebook. I have a birthday today, I'm 71 years old, and I have a fundraiser. I'm looking for money for the Albany Damien Center. We have a capital fund. We're trying to raise $400,000 for our new center, which is opening as we speak on Madison Avenue. We're gonna have 22 apartments for homeless people with the AIDS virus. I've been connected with them since 1993, since they were on Clinton Avenue, and I was working at Salvation Army as a a rehab lady, and 8 of my guys came back positive, and my neighbor Marcus said, send them to the Damien Center. So I've been in love with the Damien Center ever since, so if you wanna make an old lady happy, give them some money on my behalf, I love it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
DEW.
Right.
Having it all in the same location really gives some synergies.
I agree.
Need it.
I'd like you each to grab one of these cards, pass those cards out there and make sure you fill this information out. Because it's really useful to have these open conversations. It's good to put it down in paper so that we've got it. Warren?
One other quick one for Scott. In terms of your advanced planning, and how do you plan to move forward with providing the capacity that this neighborhood needs?
Well, a lot of it would be outreach, and a lot of it would be actually outreach to this particular location, which we've had that conversation. So doing some of the programming that we already do here, because this is a satellite location, a lot of times the librarians who come here and do programming are actually librarians from other locations. So it's not, we have one librarian now who's in-house, but what we would be doing is sending other librarians, like we do to other schools and other after-school programs, to come here and do programming. I know David and I have talked about leaving technology here, so that technology is accessible, and maybe the YMCA agreeing that they'll man the fort for those after-school hours, but we still provide the technology here. We've talked about book drop-off here so that people can still pick up holds, and we've also talked about having a book dispensing machine, which some libraries have been doing in the country, where if you want to come, you want to grab a book, you go, you put in your library card, and the book spits out at you. It's not that great relationship that you can have with the staff, but it always provides some of those services that are necessary, and pop-up libraries as well.
But what about the expansion of services? That's all. I'm just trying to get an idea of what's the long-range plan for putting the proper square footage in this neighborhood that it might need.
You
Again,
don't have a good feel for the expansion, like having a whole bunch of new apartments in the neighborhood changes the need.
oh, I agree. We've been watching that expansion for some time now. And that's one thing that makes this decision really, really hard. We would hope that new apartments would bring in new people, and those people would be library users. We've worked with the downtown bid to actually get cards to people who get those apartments. A card comes in the mail to them saying, hey, welcome to the city of Albany. Did you know you could get a library card? The board could very well from this conversation go back and have a conversation about what would be the cost for a new facility that fits our needs. We could very well get that from this conversation.
Well, okay, also, you're saying a book pickup, but a lot of us don't have the Wi-Fi, can't get Netflix and all of that. We do
We
come
do
here.
DVDs as well.
Oh, DVDs.
Yeah, we would do.
And perhaps the expansion of the Wi-Fi to include, you have a poverty area here, and some of us are very poor and cannot even afford the
we know.
Wi-Fi.
That's-
Can't you get us on board with the free Wi-Fi? That would help tremendously.
And we've talked to the city about expanding our Wi-Fi services beyond our campus.
Thank you.
Yes?
I have a question. I'm a little bit younger, but I remember the bookmobile coming to our neighborhood. That's my age.
Purple bus.
Yes, I remember it very well, and it was wonderful. A lot of us were, well, I'm a project child, so a lot of us couldn't get to the library, and the purple books would come and we rent our books out. It was wonderful.
We want to bring the bookmobile back. However, the bookmobile, again,
It costs.
it costs money. The reason why we originally got rid of the bookmobile was the cost of the program, because the bus cost so much to fix, and the bus was always breaking down.
Oh, yeah.
I can tell you that this board has discussed a bookmobile for some time now, so I would not be, it's one of my, like I say, I don't wanna close libraries, I wanna build libraries. One of my goals is one of those libraries to build is a bookmobile. I wanna bring that program back. We have a fantastic relationship with CDTA. We're always talking about how they can help us with that. So that is definitely something we wanna bring back. However, you need to staff it, and you need to pay for gas, and you need to pay for the books. And again, that's where we reach our financial issues.
Okay, and another thing we should have out here and we don't have is the CDTA bike and ride. We don't have that, and this would be a great draw, have it right here.
We can whisper in their ear.
Okay.
We were interested in doing a bicycle repair station here like we have in all of our other branches. And hopefully now that you're a little bit settled, maybe we can have that conversation about it. So there are some other services that, you know, that we can still provide out here.
I just want to say, Scott, you're doing a good job, you know, executive director, aside from this we talked about.
Thank you.
Over, I see a lot of improvements, that are great. Some I disagree with, but that's, you know, I have to go.
You let me know.
I will.
You let me know, so it's fine.
That would surprise me. Okay. Well, if there's nothing else, thank you for your time. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
And there will be another one of these Wednesday evening, so tell your friends.